The sting was everywhere, not just the sharp, burning lines etched across Maya's back from Madame Dubois' cane the night before. A brutal punishment for daring to care. It was in the ache of her muscles as she forced herself upright in the pre-dawn gloom, the gritty exhaustion behind her eyes, the cold dread settling in her stomach like a stone. Every breath pulled at the tender skin beneath her thin nightdress. Yet beneath the physical pain, a fiercer fire burned. It wasn't anger, though, that simmered too. It was something purer, stronger, a deep, stubborn river of compassion. It whispered that a man, broken and hidden in the shadows, needed her more than she needed rest or safety. His name was Elias, just Elias, a beggar who smelled of dust and despair, whose haunted eyes held secrets too heavy for his frail frame. And Maya, the orphaned maid with nothing but calloused hands and a too tender heart, had chosen him, chosen to defy the cruelty of her world. One stolen moment, one scrap of aid at a time, the memory of his fevered skin under her touch yesterday, the quiet gasp of relief when she'd cleaned his wounds, fueled her now. Madame Dubois could beat her raw again tonight. It wouldn't stop her. Elias needed the honey she'd bartered her meager breakfast for, the pungent healing herbs begged from Old Man Ben the apothecary, the clean strip of cloth torn from her only spare underskirt. The city outside her cramped attic room slept, unaware of the small rebellion stirring within its walls, a rebellion fueled solely by kindness. The walk to the forgotten alley behind the bustling Oasis Market felt longer this morning, each step jolting her bruised back. The usually comforting scent of baking bread from the early bakeries felt cloying. The rhythmic clang of the blacksmith starting his forge sounded like a warning bell. Maya clutched her small bundle tighter, her knuckles white. She rehearsed her lie for Madame Dubois in her mind, fetching special soap, checking the price of flour, anything flimsy enough to pass. Fear was a cold serpent coiling around her ribs, but the image of Elias's grateful eyes, the fragile trust she'd seen blossom there, was a warm ember she sheltered fiercely. He's alone, she thought, her heart clenching. He has no one, just me. The thought was terrifying and empowering all at once. She turned the final corner, the damp brick wall cool against her fingertips, steeling herself for the sight of his suffering, ready to offer whatever meager comfort she could. The air left Maya's lungs in a shocked gasp replaced by ice. Her heart didn't just pound. It seemed to stop dead, then slam violently against her ribs like a trapped bird. The scene before her wasn't suffering. It was devastation. The familiar patch of stained cardboard Elias used as a mat was shredded, scattered like confetti. Dark, ominous stains, unmistakably blood, bloomed across the dusty cobblestones, stark and terrifying in the weak morning light. His chipped tin plate, the one she'd carefully filled yesterday, was gone. A single worn leather shoe lay discarded nearby. Too large, too fine, not his. A silent scream built in Maya's throat. Elias! Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at her. Had they taken him? Killed him? Left him bleeding out? Her eyes scanned the desolation frantically, her breath coming in ragged, tear-choked hitches. Then, cutting through the ringing silence in her ears, came a sound. Low, guttural, thick with pain, a groan. It came from behind the towering, rotten fruit crates piled haphazardly near the alley wall. Maya moved without thought, her own pain forgotten. She scrambled over splintered wood, her hands scraping on rough surfaces, her pulse roaring in her ears. And there he was, slumped against the grimy bricks like a discarded rag doll, barely conscious. The sight was a physical blow. Yesterday's injuries were bad, but this was brutality. Fresh, livid bruises bloomed across his jaw and cheekbone, swelling one eye shut. A deep, angry gash split his forehead above his eyebrow, sluggishly weeping crimson down the side of his face, matting in his dark, tangled hair. Dust and blood caked his worn clothes. He looked smaller, broken in a way that tore at Maya's soul. Elias! The cry ripped from her, raw and desperate. She fell to her knees beside him, the rough cobbles scraping her skin, her bundle tumbling forgotten. Tears blurred her vision, hot and stinging. She reached for the herbs, her hands trembling violently, fingers fumbling uselessly with the small pouch. Who did this to you? Her voice was a broken whisper choked with horror and fury. He stirred weakly, his one good eye fluttering open. The pain in its depths was unbearable. He tried to speak, his lips cracked and dry. Only a harsh, rasping whisper emerged, each word an effort. They came for me. He coughed, a wet, painful sound that made Maya flinch. 2 of them. like shadows. A wave of crushing guilt washed over Maya, cold and suffocating. She pressed her shaking hand gently against his less injured cheek. "I shouldn't have left you alone," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "I'm so sorry, Elias, so sorry." The image of him, vulnerable and asleep in this very spot, while she slept fitfully under Madame Dubois' roof, filled her with self-loathing. "No," Elias managed, his voice barely audible. He lifted a trembling hand, gesturing weakly. "You saved me yesterday." He paused, gathering strength, his breath rattling. "I can bear this pain. What I can't bear is putting you in danger." The raw fear in his good eye, the genuine terror for her, cut through Maya's despair like a knife. "Let me worry about that," she said, her voice trembling but gaining strength, infused with a fierce determination that surprised even her. She wiped her eyes roughly with the back of her hand, smearing dust and tears. Panic wouldn't help him now. Action would. Taking a deep, steadying breath, she forced her hands to still. She retrieved the water skin from her bundle. Precious clean water she'd drawn before dawn. With infinite care, using the cleanest corner of the cotton cloth, she began to clean the fresh wounds. The cut above his brow was deep. She could see the glint of bone beneath the clotted blood. She flinched inwardly but kept her touch feather light. Elias hissed through clenched teeth but didn't pull away. Next came the honey, thick and golden. Maya knew its sting would be sharp, but also its magic against infection. "This will help," she murmured, more to herself than him, as she carefully dabbed it onto the deepest cuts, including the ugly gash on his forehead. The sweet, cloying scent mixed unpleasantly with the metallic tang of blood. Finally, she used the larger piece of cloth to bind a nasty scrape on his forearm, wrapping it snugly but not too tight. As she worked, a plan formed in her mind, born of desperation. This alley was no longer a hiding place. It was a target. "I'll find a better place for you," she promised, her voice low and urgent as she tied off the makeshift bandage. "Somewhere safer. You can't stay here anymore. It's not safe." The thought of moving him, injured as he was daunting. But the alternative was unthinkable. Suddenly, Elias's hand shot out, weak but startlingly urgent. His fingers closed around her wrist. His grip was feeble, yet it carried the weight of his terror. "Maya." His voice was a desperate scrape. "If they find out, I'm alive." He swallowed hard, his good eye wide and terrified, fixed on hers. "They'll kill me." The starkness of his words, the absolute certainty in his terror, sent a fresh chill down Maya's spine. Who were these people? What had this broken man done? Or what did he know that warranted such violence? The questions screamed in her mind, but she pushed them down. Answers could wait. Survival couldn't. Without a heartbeat of hesitation, her resolve hardening into steel, she met his terrified gaze. "Then we'll keep you hidden," she declared, her voice firm, unwavering. "Deep in the shadows, until you're strong enough to run, or to fight." The word fight felt strange on her tongue, belonging to a world far removed from scrubbing floors and dodging blows. Elias stared at her, stunned. The fear in his eyes flickered, replaced by a dawning, incredulous wonder. Who was this girl? This scrap of a maid in a threadbare dress, with nothing to her name but bruises and defiance. She possessed no weapons, no allies, no power. Yet here she was, kneeling in filth, promising protection, risking everything, her safety, her meager livelihood, perhaps her life, for a stranger. A beggar presumed worthless by the world. Her courage, so pure and uncalculated, was a beacon in his personal darkness, a warmth he hadn't felt in months. It was terrifying and humbling. A single tear escaped his swollen eye, tracing a clean path through the grime on his cheek. Back within the oppressive walls of Madame Dubois' grand, yet cold, townhouse, a very different scene unfolded. Sunlight streamed through the ornate parlor windows, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. Madame Dubois sat ensconced in a plush velvet armchair, a picture of smug satisfaction. She sipped daintily from a porcelain cup filled with thick, sweet pap, a cruel parody of contentment. Standing before her, shifting his weight and grinning with brutish pride, was Bruno. He was one of the men Madame Dubois kept around for difficulties, thick-necked, small-eyed and utterly loyal to her coin. His right hand was wrapped in a crude bandage, stained a rusty brown. He held it up like a trophy. "Done, Madame," Bruno announced, his voice rough. "Gave him a proper send-off, we did. Messy business." He flexed his bandaged knuckles. That beggar won't be showing his face around here again, that's for sure. If he ain't crawled off to die already, he'll wish he had. Left him good and broken. He chuckled, a low, unpleasant sound. Madame Dubois' lips curled into a thin, satisfied smile that didn't reach her cold eyes. She took another slow sip of pap, savoring the sweetness and the news equally. Good, she murmured, setting the cup down with a soft clink. Her gaze drifted towards the window, towards the invisible alley where Elias lay. That meddlesome little wretch, Maya. She'll suffer now. Her voice was venomous silk. No beggar to play nurse to. Just her chores, her debts, and my displeasure. The pain of her back will remind her. The guilt for leading us to him. If the pain won't chase her back to whatever mud hut village she crawled from, the guilt will grind her down. She envisioned Maya's spirit breaking, her defiance crumbling into tearful submission. The thought warmed her more than the pap. Madame Dubois leaned back, a queen surveying her petty domain. She saw Maya as a simple equation. Pressure applied equals desired result. Suffering bred obedience or flight. She calculated only with cruelty and control. Blind to the complexities of the human heart, she so carelessly bruised. She couldn't fathom the quiet strength that hardship had forged within Maya. The resilience born from a lifetime of loss. She didn't know, couldn't possibly conceive that Maya's spirit was not brittle glass, but tempered steel. And she was utterly ignorant of the bond, forged in shared vulnerability and whispered promises in a filthy alley, that now linked the destitute maid and the broken beggar. A bond sealed not in gold, but in blood, honey, and unwavering courage. It was a connection far stronger, far more dangerous, than Madame Dubois' petty cruelties could ever break. Night had draped the city in velvet darkness, punctuated by the distant glow of gas, lamps, and the occasional shout echoing from a tavern. Hidden deep within the labyrinthine back streets behind the now silent Oasis Market was an abandoned storage shed. Its door hung crookedly on one hinge, the wood warped and rotten. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of dust, mildew, and the sharp, clean scent of the herbs Maya had applied. Elias lay on a thin, worn blanket, a precious item Maya had risked everything to sneak from the linen closet, replacing it with an older, threadbare one she hoped Madame Dubois wouldn't notice missing. He was cleaner now, Maya having used precious drops of her washing water to gently wipe away the worst of the grime and blood. The honey glistened on his forehead, wound in the faint moonlight, filtering through a crack in the roof. He was still terribly pale, his breathing shallow, but the terrifying edge of unconsciousness had receded. The deeper cuts were bound with strips from Maya's underskirt, stark white against his skin. Maya knelt beside him, carefully tucking the edges of the blanket around his shivering form. The night air in the shed was chilly. She had no coat to offer him. "I'll bring you something hot tomorrow," she whispered, her voice barely disturbing the heavy silence. "Something nourishing. Broth, maybe. It will help you heal faster, give you strength." The thought of smuggling hot food was another layer of risk, another potential beating. But the necessity outweighed the fear. Elias turned his head slowly on the makeshift pillow she'd fashioned from her rolled-up shawl. His good eye found hers in the gloom. The raw terror had subsided, replaced by a profound exhaustion and something else. A deep, bewildered gratitude. "Maya." His voice was a thread of sound, but clearer than before. "Yes?" She leaned closer, her heart constricting at the vulnerability in his voice. He paused, gathering his words, his gaze intense. "When this is over," he swallowed, "if I survive this, I promise you." His voice gained a sliver of strength, a quiet intensity. "I will never forget you. What you've done, risking yourself." He trailed off, the magnitude of it seeming to overwhelm him. A faint, weary smile touched Maya's lips. It was a small light in the oppressive darkness of the shed. She placed her hand gently over his where it lay on the blanket. His skin was still too cold. "Just get better, Elias," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "That's all I want. Just see you well." Her wish was simple, pure, devoid of any expectation beyond his survival. In that moment, the squalor of the shed, the danger lurking outside, even the phantom pain across her back faded. There was only this fragile connection, this shared sliver of hope in the overwhelming dark. But Maya's world, Elias's world, was far more dangerous, far more intricately woven with unseen threats than either could imagine. Their whispered exchange, their moment of quiet solidarity, was not as private as they believed. Outside the broken shed, deep within the pool of shadow, cast by a crumbling brick archway at the edge of the deserted market square, a figure stood perfectly still. He was a ghost in the night, clad in a long, dusty trench coat that blended seamlessly with the darkness. His face was obscured by the low brim of a hat, but his posture was alert, watchful. He hadn't followed Maya. He'd been watching the alley earlier, drawn by the commotion, and had tracked the slight figure, supporting the injured man to this new hiding place. His eyes, sharp and unblinking, were fixed on the crack in the shed door. Having witnessed the tender scene within, slowly, deliberately, the man in the trench coat raised his right hand. Clutched between his gloved fingers wasn't a weapon, but a small, slightly crumpled photograph. He angled it to catch the faint moonlight. The image showed a man in sharp contrast to the broken figure inside the shed. This man was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, exuding an aura of power and confidence. He stood on a sun-drenched terrace overlooking a cityscape that screamed wealth. It was a face clean-shaven, hair perfectly groomed, eyes sharp and commanding. The face of Elias, but a Elias from another life, another universe. Printed boldly beneath the photograph were words that transformed the battered beggar into something else entirely. Alphonse Xavier Valentine, missing, presumed dead. Reward 5,000,000. The man's lips, hidden in shadow, might have twitched. It wasn't a smile of compassion. It was the calculating expression of a hunter who has just cornered incredibly valuable, incredibly dangerous prey. He lowered the photograph, his gaze never leaving the shed. $5 million, and the key to a mystery that stretched far beyond this grimy alley and the courageous Maid. The game had just become infinitely more complex and infinitely more perilous. The shadows now held more than just darkness. They held eyes and intentions, and a fortune hanging in the balance. Maya and Elias, clinging to hope in their fragile sanctuary, were utterly unaware that the storm surrounding them had just intensified 100-fold. The first blow had landed, but the true battle for survival and the revelation of the secret billionaire in the shadows was only just beginning, to be continued. Feeling the suspense? Your support means everything in bringing Maya and Elias's dangerous journey to life. Did their courage touch you? Are you desperate to know who the man in the trench coat works for? And what happens next? Let me know right now in the comments. Drop it if you want next episode. Share this with a friend who loves underdog stories. And smash that like button so I know you're invested. Every comment, like, and share gives Maya more strength and helps unravel the billionaire's secret. Don't keep us waiting. Tell me what you think below.